Take a look at a couple of things that got our attention in the last week or so in the media. The first thing, actually some bad news, sad news. You see this kind of thing 2 or 3 weeks after a long holiday weekend, or the Christmas holidays or New Year's Eve, when the police, they published the statistics about how many people were injured and killed in road accidents. And of course, about a month ago, we had the May 1st and May 3rd holidays. We had 9 days altogether, so a really long holiday break. And during that time, 72 people, unfortunately, killed on the roads all over the country. Poland is at or near the bottom, I think, in EU statistics when it comes to road deaths. I think the trend is getting better. Dave, what's the problem with Polish drivers and Polish roads?
Well, I don't think there's any special problem with Polish drivers, but Polish roads certainly are, undergoing a massive facelift, but still they're not quite there yet. You tend to find on the longer journeys, there's some fabulous motorway connected by a lot of dual carriageway, and on the dual carriageways there is maybe a culture of overtaking that I still find a bit excessive, a bit scary at times.
Yeah, they're a little bit too
cutting in and out,
too
of
risky.
trucks,
Just passing when they shouldn't, and just too aggressive generally. I think the temptation is always, when you're in another country, the temptation is always to say these people can't drive.
Oh, no,
right?
That's not the case.
Well, no, I think it is. But every country says that about every other country. When you're visiting someplace, if somebody's driving too fast, you say these people can't drive. The Italians famously get this label, right?
Right. Well, yeah, I think it's a slightly kind of a machismo thing, isn't it? And like every driver consider themselves better than average. I mean,
I certainly am. You probably are too.
Me too. Yeah.
Dave, we're all better than average.
No,
sure.
I'm painfully aware of my limitations, quite frankly. I learned to drive in Poland. I took the Prawo Jazdy exam, and I finally passed it on my third attempt, and I never thought I would, to be honest with you. But I've driven to Warsaw, I've driven to Poznan. When I drove to Warsaw, it was in an old LPG Fiat Punto, Brava, excuse me. Doing myself down, and that was kind of frightening, but I'm not sure if that was my inexperience or just the nature of the roads. When you're driving up to Warsaw, it might have changed by now, but there's an awful lot of these intersections that are like farms crossing the street, farmers going about their business, and it can be a bit scary. They're chunged along in the tractor and everyone's speeding up into the section. Highest, I think, speed limits in Europe as well on the motorways. It's 140 here, which people always get a kick out of. Which, of course, leads to the natural rate about 10, 15 over. Everyone always goes about 10, 15 over the speed limit. So then you're up to 155, and that's, serious speed.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, this is anecdotal, I know, but I'm on the Autostrada from time to time, between here and Tarnów, between here and Katowice. And, as you say, the speed limit is 140, but the flow of traffic is at 150, 160 minimum. Mm-hmm. And if you're on a bus, as I was not too long ago, of course, granted, buses are the slowest on the road, but you see these, high-end Audis and BMWs, and not only, but especially those cars just flying past you at 170, 180, and there's not a cop in sight. I've never seen a speed trap set up. I've never seen a police car just in the flow of traffic. It seems like it's basically an Autobahn, like in Germany. You can go as fast as you want.
Well, in Germany in the last 7 or 8 years, and in France as well, two countries where traditionally it was held that you could speed quite a lot on the big motorway systems. They've clamped down with these radar speed cameras. So they're automated.
I think in Germany, I have some experience of, and there are still unrestricted motorways in Germany, particularly in former Eastern Germany, actually. And you kind of know when you're on those because that's when you get seriously overtaken by very big, very fast cars. But other parts, more in like Western Germany, it's quite strictly controlled.
Yeah, and you're right. There is still, of course, a limited amount of motorways where you can drive to your heart's content in an old souped up Porsche. But they've massively increased the money they're taking in, and of course that financial penalty has bit hard into overall speeding in Germany, and as a result the road deaths have gone down. It's one of those, I think Polish drivers are fine. As I said, maybe a bit aggressive on the old overtaking, but that's because Polish roads are so busy, there's so many trucks, you got to get where you're going, and it's a deficiency in the road network more than anything, and that's going to take time because there's just so many routes in Poland,
Also, there's a huge increase in the number of cars on the road. I mean, even 10 years ago, there was far, far less cars, and now nearly everyone.
Well, we all know the roads are much better than they used to be. I mean, even 10 years ago.
And the cars, of course.
The A4 for, the Autostrada. But the road from here to Warsaw, the main road, I think it's the E7 or the E77, is disgraceful.
It's
It's
still,
disgraceful.
it's still like I described when I was in my Bravo.
Yeah, it feels like a little 2-lane road at times. It's like you have to slow down in places to let people cross the street. And there's like, you stop in front of churches and things, like it goes right through the middle of small towns. And this is the main road to the capital city. It's unbelievable.
I was pulling out of a petrol station, and on old LPG converted cars, occasionally enforced, the thing cuts out, and I'm in the middle, like trying to do the U-turn back onto the fast lane. Oh my God, my pants were fine.
Anyway, be careful, people on the road, wherever you're going.
That's the main message from the KrakCast. Drive safely, people.
Moving on, interesting news out of Warsaw, the plans to build a mega airport somewhere between Warsaw and Łódź kind of got a big boost. Moving forward, getting a presidential approval. So it looks like this ball is rolling. Building a huge airport, kind of a risk, kind of a gamble, hoping that it turns into a hub. Is it forward thinking by the government, or is it a massive comical waste of money?
Well, I think it could have the potential to be a fabulous idea. I mean, Chopin is badly overstretched at the moment, so that will take the pressure off the main international airport in Warsaw. And why couldn't it be developed into a hub? Poland's slap bang in the middle of the continent, where the most kind of cheap flights zigzag. So I think it certainly has the potential to be a win for the planners who came up with it. Josh, skeptical?
Yeah, well, I think also if you're actually building an airport from the outset with the intention of it being a hub, so that you have sufficient runways, sufficient infrastructure around it, so that because of course the purpose of a hub is not just as a destination, but it's where you change to go somewhere else. And at the moment, everyone here, if you want to go to long distance, and almost inevitably you go via Frankfurt or even London Heathrow, which if you're going to the Middle East is kind of absurd.
And another thing that I saw was that the budget is huge. It's like 5 to 7 billion euro. Now, I'm imagining you get a lot of airport for 5, 6, 7 billion euro, especially building it in a country where the wages aren't as high as, say, in the UK or in Germany. The
funny thing was, I saw in the Polish media this in zlotys that the budget is it says between 20 and 30 billion zlotys. That is a hell of a margin there, 20 or 30 billion. Yeah, somewhere in the middle, I guess.
Well, why do you think?
But wait, exactly. That's the proposed budget. We all know that in the real world, the price tag will be double that when they get into overruns and extra costs and things like that. So realistically, you're looking at a price tag of, let's say, at least 40 billion zlotys, right?
Well, I think that's a bit pessimistic.
That's realistic.
And there is an element as well, let's not forget, it's very hard to calculate the costs because you can't foresee some of the problems you can have on a massive build like that. It's not easy to build a giant airport in the middle of a country.
But then again...
have some faith, John, in the planners of Poland.
We'll see. Then again, the numbers, I don't have them on hand. I didn't bother to do any research on this. Research on this particular
budget. Everyone agrees with that, right?
Topic.
I'm doubling the budget.
But there's another factor here. The number of passengers at every airport in this country is just rising dramatically. More and more people are flying more and more often, and the existing infrastructure is being stretched to its limits, right? We all know the Krakow airport has been expanded multiple times in the last 10 years or so. And so maybe this is simply a reflection of anticipated demand 10 years from now, 15 years from now. And better to build it now for whatever the price tag is than build it 10 years from now when it really will be double or triple whatever it costs today.
Right, and let's not forget that an airport will actually earn money. I mean, airlines have to pay for the privilege to land there. The airport has to be constructed in such a way that the airlines feel it's worthwhile to land there. But... yeah, I mean, it's a lot of money to build it, but I mean, it is at least ostensibly an investment.
As well, when you spend money on large infrastructure projects, of course, you're paying the wages of many Polish workers, and it's always a more popular
or
type
Ukrainian
of it's a more popular type of investment. You can see the physical results of it, and as long as the demand is there, surely it's a good idea long term. It won't be completed till 2027, so. It's a strategic, long-term infrastructure project that I don't know as much about as possibly someone we should bring on the show, maybe who knows a bit more about it, a bit more of the details.
What do you think the biggest...
Maybe it is a white elephant, but, it sounds like a good idea.
What do you think the biggest hub in Europe is right now? I mean,
it's Frankfurt, isn't it?
I reckon it would be Frankfurt. Is Heathrow a hub? It is, I guess.
It is, yeah.
Frankfurt and Heathrow. So I guess the idea is taking business away from Frankfurt?
Yeah, almost certainly. I mean, it's the Germans.
Yeah, it has to be, yeah. Sure, why not? Volleyball. We don't talk enough about volleyball on the KrakCast.
That's because it confuses me.
Scandalous. Do you know on the volleyball team, there's always one guy or one girl in the women's game with a different colored shirt? What's up with that? Do you know?
Not really.
Seriously, there's one. They have a different color, and there's a purpose. They have like a special role.
Right, and I actually represented my school at volleyball,
and you don't know?
No. It was a long time ago.
That's embarrassing because that is one of them. Is it the captain or the person who's like in charge of putting the ball up for other people?
I know nothing about volleyball.
Why are we discussing it?
I'll look it up later. Anyway, we're discussing it because I saw it because Poland they beat China to win the Nations League. The Nations League. Now, no offense to anybody, I'm not a big fan of volleyball. Okay, I get other people are into it. Okay, that's fine. But what's interesting to me is the long and confusing list of tournaments in volleyball. Because, volleyball is quite big here in Poland, actually. Club volleyball on the national side. You've seen it on TV, right?
It's a grand sport to watch on TV as well. It's athletic. It's pretty simple to catch the thread. There's no complicated tactics or anything. You can see who wins each point.
I think I know the answer to this question already, but have you ever been to a match?
No.
Okay. I knew the answer to that question already before
My issue with volleyball is the same as yours, John. I can never figure out the relative importance of all these tournaments. They all seem to have the world in it. There's the World League, there's the World Cup, there's the
European Championship.
Yeah, and they're always reforming and restructuring the World League, and I don't really understand how it all.
There's
works.
also the Olympics as well. So which title means the most? I have no idea. Which one is the most prestigious? Which one is the winner is.
Well, yeah, but
not necessarily.
Football,
yeah, that's true.
Like in football and soccer, you win the Olympic gold. Okay, it's nice, but it's not as impressive as winning the World Cup. Not nearly as impressive, right?
Stunning. The championship playoffs.
Astonishing display of volleyball ignorance here on the KrakCast. We weren't messing when we said we knew nothing about it.
But the thing is, I was in Rzeszów one time. Beautiful city, by the way. Love Rzeszów.
Yeah, I've been there. It's lovely.
And I was there on the day of a club. There was a club match there, club volleyball, one of the event stages of some European tournament. Huge crowd, great atmosphere, very, very family-friendly atmosphere. It wasn't like a football match. It wasn't like some kind of dodgy people. Really, really nice atmosphere. Looked like a lot of fun. And it's curious that we don't have a big-time team here in Krakow.
Well, let's just celebrate the fact that Poland are brilliant at volleyball. They're one of the best teams in the world, aren't they?
I believe so, yeah.
Congratulations, Poland, on winning the Nations League.
Please, let's talk about something else, John.
Whatever that is. Next on our list, and this is already pissing me off just looking at it on my computer screen here.
All right, John. All right.
I'll introduce it. I'll toss it over to you guys, and you can come back to me for a beat down here. The Independent is reporting that the Polish government is going to ask Donald Trump to establish a forward military base on Polish soil to deter Russia or to act as a defense against Russian aggression. Now, again, I've got my own opinion on this. You guys go first.
Well, I would love to see it happen.
Jesus Christ.
Does it need saying that we have quite an aggressive neighbour in Russia? There's military exercises on both sides of the Polish border have been going on for the last few years. And it would be great to see a permanent presence, as what has been asked officially to Donald Trump. Now, I get what your objection will be, the financial cost.
I already want to interrupt you like 5 times.
The lack of European gratitude for American troops.
Yeah, Yankee, go home. Yankee, please come defend us.
Well,
Make up your mind. Make up your mind.
I don't see the US like that. So what do you say to people like me?
Many people do.
Many people do. And there is rampant anti-Americanism in Europe. And that is a bit rich, I suppose, when you're asking that nation to support you militarily. However, Poland has always been a different story to say France or the UK. Would you agree, John? I mean, have you got an issue?
I wouldn't put UK in that basket. UK is actually
and UK is its own
pulling their own weight, I think, yeah.
But Poland, I think, is very sensitive to the fact, and also they meet the NATO payment schedules. They're one of the few countries that do. And I think they're very sensitive to the fact that the US will require a substantial amount of the funding to come from the Polish government. Now, the article itself is a bit woolly about what the total cost is. It just mentions that the Polish government have proposed paying $2 billion.
Yeah, we don't know the final price tag, but they want to kick in $2 billion. So.
Well, look, it isn't the Polish government that has decided to upset the geopolitical balance of Europe. It's Vladimir Putin. And either Vladimir Putin is an ally or he's not. And I think Donald Trump in the last year has come to realise he's very much not. And it's time to aggressively show Vladimir Putin. Now, if you're getting into a chest bulging competition, here's the US's pectoral muscles.
Josh, let me get you on record here. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just thinking about the budget. We were talking just a few seconds ago about proposed airport, the budget of, say, 40 billion euros more or less a dollar, and we're talking about a 2 billion euro or dollar Polish contribution to this military base.
It's adding up. Right?
I would imagine that a military base is probably not as expensive as an airport hub, but
the airport was 5 to 7 billion euro estimate, John.
That's right. That was
John then decided to double that to.
Well, no, the 10 to 20. Sorry, the 30 billion zloty.
Zloty, yes.
Zloty, yeah.
But anyway,
so this costs money, basically. Is your
right?
That's your biggest objection is the price tag.
I'm kind of with Dave on the idea that. Basically, the purpose is as a deterrent. I mean, it's not so that there will be, active promotion of military things taking
Absolutely
place.
not, no.
Unless
it's a preventative measure.
Exactly. I mean, and I think that Putin has been, for far too long, allowed to get away with too much in the region, and I don't actually think he's that expansionist. I don't believe.
And the last time we tried to reset a relationship with Russia, that the US under Obama, they the concession made to Russia was to not install a missile defense shield in the north of Poland. Now since Putin has done nothing but upset the region's balance, why shouldn't the US react by putting in more troops? That's, I suppose.
Listen
I'd like
to what
to get
you
your
just said. Why shouldn't? Well, that makes no sense. Okay, look. So you're both for it to different degrees.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. All right, I'll explain my. Okay, the short answer is: should we have troops in Poland? No. Hell no. No way. And I'll explain this with some questions that have awkward answers for you guys, EU citizens that you are, Josh, for the moment.
Time being.
Yeah, for the time being. Okay, America, 325 million people. European Union, 500 million people. The GDP's very close, almost the same. The economy is basically the same size. European Union, 2 declared nuclear powers. So the EU, about a third bigger than America, same economy, 2 nuclear powers. Why, again, do you need America to fight your fights for you? Remind me of this.
There's a valid point you're making here, which is
a valid point. That's one way you could put it. Yeah,
it's a complicated answer.
It's not complicated. Why do you need America to fight your fights? That's the question.
Well, you make it sound like America had no role in setting up.
Why do you need European Union?
Like you had no say.
Wait. European Union, 500 million people. Russia, 140 million people.
Yeah.
And as we all know, sorry, Russia, a decrepit, decaying, they're like rotting teeth. That country. We could make some good guesses about the state of their the tanks that would come rolling across the border. This is not. They don't have the best equipment necessarily. Again, 140 million people versus 500 million. France and the UK, nuclear powers. Why is it America's job to take on this burden? There's no good answer for that. There's no good answer for that reflects well on Europe.
Well, what about...
No, I'm not finished.
Hold on a second. I want to get back in.
You hold on a second.
No, you hold on a second.
Okay, I'll hold on a second. Go
right,
ahead.
you hold on a second. So what about, what Donald Trump has been arguing for, which is that the European countries increase their payments into NATO.
I don't care about their payments.
Let me finish. Increase the size of their available national armies. So crucially, much more of the troop load is coming from the European nations.
Oh, right.
And
Yeah.
take NATO more seriously as an allied organisation. What about that? You're just done with us. Fight your own
Listen,
battles.
okay, NATO. First of all, the whole
You live in Poland.
the whole geostrategic situation is still, unfortunately, frozen in 1945. The whole geostrategic posture, the defensive posture, on both sides is stuck in the post-war order of 1945, and it's time for a radical rethink of this. And I can understand how the Europeans maybe would not want a radical rethink because they benefit from it, right? For decades now, 4, 5, 6 decades, Western Europe, and especially the nations of Southern Europe, have been able to subsidize a lifestyle with the contributions of Uncle Sam. They didn't have to spend the money on guns, so they could spend it on butter, as we say, right? And this idea that you can be a student until you're 25 or 30 and get some government job for 20 years and then spend the last 3 or 4 decades of your life living la dolce vita on some generous European pension on the beach and let Uncle Sam pick up the guns and man the fort and keep the Russians at bay. No, this is over. This is over. And that mentality and this reality really has allowed, again, a de facto subsidy to be transferred to governments all over the continent that allow them to produce a lifestyle that they really weren't earning, so to speak. I don't know if I'm saying this in the proper way.
Are you done yet?
But no, I'm not done yet. This is ridiculous. I mean, come on.
And it's not over. You don't run NATO.
Why do we... What?
It's not over. What's over?
No, NATO's a
America's
joke.
done.
NATO's
You're
a joke. NATO's a joke. Listen, let's pick Belgium or Portugal or who else is in NATO?
Belgians.
Iceland. They're in NATO.
Yeah, they have a lot of NATO members.
Are they really American allies in a sense that would involve significant sacrifice of blood or treasure? And the answer to that is no. The answer to that is no. We all know the answer is no. And so
what about Poland?
If you want to play the NATO card, right? NATO is the American 800-pound gorilla and a few ankle biters. Sorry, I just lost a lot of friends there, but it's a fact. It's a fact. So let's not pretend that Europe has pulled its own weight or paid its own bills for the last 65, 70 years.
Nobody said
and it's
that.
time
You're
for a radical.
Somebody's not in this room.
It's time for a radical rethink about the number of tanks and guns on the ground and who's paying for them. Why can't Europe pay for its own defense? And also, just as a last thing before I take a drink of water here, I'll agree with Josh what he said a minute ago. I think the Russian threat, and now I'm going to lose my Polish friends, the Russian threat is comically exaggerated, especially here in Poland. Poles, sorry, Poland, you're not rational about this. I know you've got historical reasons for being kind of on edge about this whole thing, but Russia is not going to attack anytime soon. Probably never again. I'll say never again. I'll just say it. Russia is not the threat you think, right? And even if they were, I said that my last point, but I lied. And even if they were, even if Russia was a threat, if those Russian tanks roll into Estonia, why does that mean Washington has to go nose to nose with a nuclear-powered Russian bear? Why do kids in Montana and people in Louisiana, Nebraska, and California, and Oregon, et cetera, have to get ready to go to war and sacrifice their children, sacrifice their tax money for a rich, developed 500 million person European Union? That makes no sense to me at all.
You support an EU army, which is a...
Do what you want. It's your country.
No, it's a refreshingly honest take on it.
Go ahead.
Maybe a little long-winded,
why do waitresses working in New Hampshire have to subsidize a comfortable European lifestyle and pay for American guns to defend a rich Europe?
I think our listeners get this.
Yeah, I could say it 10 different ways, but it's the same idea.
Why do mechanics in Georgia... Yeah, we get it, John.
But again, the point, there are mechanics. But again... there's no answer for that, and there's no answer for that doesn't kind of embarrass Europe. Sorry.
So sorry. Just to check it. Look, there's some truth to what you say about the EU needing to pay for its own upkeep, and that's it's. What I'd like to ask you is, the US spends 50 years fighting communism. The wall comes down. Is the idea then to just let Russia do whatever it likes and just trample over allies' borders at will? I mean, we saw in the last few years how willing Vladimir Putin is to use his military and how close he's used it to Europe's door. And I support the idea of much higher troop contributions coming from the European countries, but surely it's a working together dynamic, John. You can't just ignore geopolitics. The US was not some passive player in this tale. They actively rearranged the world after World War II with themselves in the driving seat. The clue's in the name: superpower. Okay, you're supposed to be the only one in the world, and with that, yes, maybe it comes some logical fallacies like, countries that are constantly criticising the US, using them for defensive backup. But, there is a reason all these institutions exist, and there is value to NATO. Come on, Josh?
Well, I'm broadly buy into John's arguments here, and I think that since the Berlin Wall came down, a kind of predominantly democratic Europe has enjoyed very much the benefits of American military power without the necessity, really, for it to be here. I absolutely accept that. But nevertheless, I think in recent years with the situation with Vladimir Putin, and I think that Ukraine is different from Poland or Estonia in the sense that, of course, to many Russians, Ukraine is not just a part of Russia, it's the birthplace of the Russian nation. Kiev, particularly, was spiritual capital of the Russian people.
Yeah.
Ukraine is a different story. I don't see realistically he has any ambitions of marching into Poland or Estonia is a Baltic port. I can see that there's strategic advantages there.
And let's not forget Kaliningrad,
Well, yeah, I mean, but Kaliningrad is pretty much forgotten. I mean, it's of
immense strategic importance.
The existence of NATO is sufficient at the moment to prevent Putin from doing anything further. I think that a lot of this has been and will continue to be kind of talk, really. We will do this, we will do this, we will do this. As long as that talk is going on, it is acting as a disincentive.
Well, it was a mistake to enlarge NATO and take it right up to the Russian doorstep. That was a mistake. What did NATO gain by adding the Baltic states?
Well,
nothing.
But we can't.
It was a provocation. It was a provocation.
Counterfactuals. I mean, it's done now.
It is done now.
Well, perhaps the missed opportunity was not bringing Russia closer to NATO in the 90s when they were actually actively looking for that. Now, that's a totally different ballgame. But now you're into a situation, John, where all of a sudden you do believe that NATO could have, could be a workable solution to the world's problems.
No, I don't think so.
And what about in Asia? Do you also believe that the US should completely pull out of Japan as well and let the Asia Pacific region be totally dominated by China? Yeah.
We have our own national interests. China has its, Russia has their own national interests, and so on. I don't know why the United States has to protect and defend the South Korean border and the Ukrainian border, et cetera, when we don't protect our own borders. I don't understand how we have to subsidize extremely advanced, rich nations like Japan, South Korea. Like South Korea is a good example. What is their economy? Like 50 times bigger than the North's? Their population 4 or 5 times bigger? Why do they need someone else to fight their battles for them? Why is it always our job to come in and with the tanks and guns when the local people won't do it for themselves? And on top of that, as you mentioned earlier, there's always the element of how America can't win no matter what it does. The same people who are quick to criticize it for intervening here are also criticizing it for not intervening there, right? Do something, stop doing something, right? Make up your mind. And I think after watching, after listening to this for 60 or 70 years, I think you can understand how Americans are just, fight your own battles, deal with your own problems. If it crosses that line, if it becomes our problem, then we'll deal with it. But again, South Korea's borders, Ukraine's borders, Poland's borders, the European Union's borders, not our problem to the extent that it requires trillions, that's trillions with a T, trillions of dollars, and blood and sacrifice all over. It's not our problem.
What would you do with all the lovely shiny machinery if you stopped patrolling the world seas?
No idea. Sell it to Europeans, I guess.
I'm saying, it has its own economic gravity, the whole military industrial complex.
It does. It sounds like a conspiracy theory, but you're right. And there are interests in the United States who want this to expand. They want to keep it up and keep spending more money and intervene in more places.
So is there
all around the globe? It's absolutely true.
Is there nothing to the idea of spreading democracy?
I'd like to think that idea has been put to rest.
The project was a failure.
Well, I don't know if it was a failure. Look what happens in some places. You introduce democracy and they vote for Hezbollah and Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood. And so what does that mean when you say, here's your chance to vote, and they vote for this kind of regime? So
I have always thought it must be a little frustrating as an American to get the papers in the morning and have every country in the world's problems kind of in some way thrown at your doorstep. But
sure
please,
it is.
And
be sent a bill for your trouble. Yeah.
Yeah. You would acknowledge, though, John, that the United States were the ones who set up most of the world's global systems, post World War II. They assertively stepped into the role of the world's preeminent superpower. You do accept that, yeah? I mean, you just totally disagree with that as a principle. You're an isolationist, essential.
I don't like the label, and I just want to add one thing. And some of you listening know me, some of you don't know me. I'm not saying this as some hippie peacenik, believe me. I come from a military background myself. I come from a military family. I was conceived, this is weird to say, on a German military base, believe it or not. So for those of you writing a book about me, that's a little extra little nugget of information.
Baden-Baden?
I forgot the name of it, to be honest. I don't know
nice
what it's
anecdote.
called.
Okay,
but I say American troops out of Germany, out of Italy, out of the UK. Those are the 3 places where we have the biggest bases, and let the rich, prosperous, capable, nuclear-powered Europeans deal with their own problems.
And what about any transition? Let's say the popular support for an EU army reached tipping point. I know it's a political bomb, like, it's, and there are sensitivities in Europe that you're not acknowledging. The post World War II, it was kind of like, okay, stop making armies. We got this, okay. They didn't want to rearm the Germans. It was,
again, your continent, your affairs.
Okay, John. I think you've very clearly elucidated your position on this one.
By the way, that sound you hear in the background is the keyboards of all of my Facebook friends unfriending me. So,
no, well, look, it's good to have strong views, clearly aired. There's no mincing your words there, and I respect your opinion. You're more than entitled to hold it, Josh.
Well, thank you, Dave.
Well, I think I'm a little
disagree. Fundamentally, of course, but
No, I think. Pragmatically and politically, I'm on the same side as John here. But I think that there is a short-term need, even if his name is Vladimir Putin.
I think even Donald Trump would concede that.
So again, I can only answer with the same thing that I said before. UK nuclear power, France nuclear power, more than sufficient conventional forces, tanks and guns and whatnot. Why do you have to pick up the red line to Washington? Why can't you deal with this yourselves? I don't get it.
Well, because it isn't. In terms of wealth, yes, these countries have the capability to have vastly better and more powerful military, but they don't exist. Even the British military, which sort of for many years has been the strongest European defence force, is a shadow of what it used to be.
Yeah, I think we're going around in circles at this stage. I think we've all pretty clearly put our cards on the table.
Let's finish on a lighter note.
Yeah,
on a completely different. We were talking about the news. We
went way off. That
got lost.
Way off piece there.
Our last note in the news this week. Actually, it's kind of not exactly a note, just something I noticed. I saw a concert announcement for the Krakow Arena. We kind of touched on this some time ago, I think, about the music scene here. But listen to this. This is a really impressive lineup. Starting this week, actually. Listen to this list. Lenny Kravitz, Ozzy Osbourne, Deep Purple, Pearl Jam, Iron Maiden, Roger Waters, 30 Seconds to Mars, Jack White. Let's see who else is in here. Elton John. These are AAA, like, mega stars, right? And it sounds like we've hit the big time when it comes to the live music scene. Looking forward to it, or totally indifferent to concerts these days?
I'd love to see Elton John.
Totally indifferent.
Yeah?
Yeah. Don't go to big concerts at all. Horrible experience. Yeah.
Not really anymore. I have to say, I loved it when I was young.
Yeah.
Well, for those of us who've, all three of us, we've been here long enough to remember when the music scene here was essentially zero, right?
Yeah.
You had to go to Katowice, you had to go to Warsaw, obviously. And none of this could have happened 10 years ago. And now, again, super famous acts, and we don't care?
No.
Yeah. I just don't see myself going to any. Although, I could spend the evening watching Elton on the piano, for sure.
Oh, but Billy Idol isn't playing here, is he?
Billy Idol's playing at some, I forgot, it's middle of some festival in the middle of nowhere.
I wouldn't mind seeing Jack White as well, except I have a feeling I wouldn't know a lot of the songs because I haven't kept up with his solo career as closely as I did with the White Stripes.
Well, for those of you listening, I imagine quite a few of you are much more active and interested in this than we are.
Enjoy yourself, young.
But just my point is that, again, for those of you who haven't lived in Krakow for very long, that this wasn't always the case. Before the arena, before the venue, Krakow was not a factor in the live music scene, and we're kind of spoiled for choice now. But not too long ago, we had the only choice was to get in the car and drive to Warsaw or to Prague or to whatever. Yeah.
Remember, if you're going out, bring your own military resources. Don't be calling John.
Yeah, and be careful on the Polish roads too.
Yeah,
absolutely. Goodbye.
See you next time on the news.